there was a guy at work, a younger fellow who I've been working with the last couple of Fridays, and he's one of these people who has sort of these vague artistic leanings, but he's not really a writer himself, and he was telling me he was going through a phase, and I was explaining some of this to him, and I brought up on the computer when we had a downtime. I brought up a sonnet of mine called "Midnight at a White Castle" in Bloomington, Minnesota, and I explained to him how it's about basically a poor girl who's hungry looking into a white castle in Minnesota at the people eating their fast food. And it references the famous painting by Edward Hopper, Nighthawks. It uses just by using that word. So it references that famous painting, but it's also about classism, that this poor child is outside the window looking in. But even though it's never stated, it's likely because it's called a White Castle, and there's the girl who's outside the privilege, and she's looking through glass, and I call it a boundary that never was. It's likely that the child outside, the young girl, is non-white, possibly, most likely black, since this is America, and we're talking about a white person, black, white, but definitely probably non-white. But it's never specifically stated. And I was explaining to this fellow how, it's one of the best poems you're ever going to read about American racism or American classism if you don't get the racial aspect. But I never mentioned black, Negro. I don't mention white, Caucasian. It deals with it by putting it in a really unique metaphor that's going to have far more power than if I just say lynching is wrong, racism is wrong, don't use the N word. You can't hit people and preach to them. You have to use technique, and you have to sometimes be subtle.